Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for some folks. Welcome to today's session with Eightfold AI. We've got a terrific lineup for you today. I'm really excited about this. We're going to be discussing AI and the role in identifying and growing your talent, specifically for today and for allowing you to see around corners in the future. So acquiring and developing and retaining the right talent has never been more important. Especially if you consider coming out of the pandemic and all of the things we were learning for the first time and experiencing for the first time over the last year and a half. So I'd like you to join our friends from BNY Mellon, from Deloitte, and from Oracle as we dig into this topic. So let's start with some introductions. I will begin with me. My name is Jim Griffin. I'm responsible at Eightfold for our global SI partnerships. So both the consulting and implementation partners globally that help our shared clients deliver some of the greatest capabilities around human capital management. But most importantly, I wanted to introduce Stuart Logan from BNY Mellon, Asena Monzo from Deloitte, and Jim Hickey from Oracle. We're going to start with Stuart today. Stuart, please introduce yourself, and welcome, by the way.
Thank you. I'm Stuart Logan. I head up HR for our operations and technology function here at BNY Mellon. We're about 50,000 employees as an organization, and I support about 33,000 of the 50,000 people. But I also have a sort of secondary role heading up people experience here at BNY Mellon, thinking about how do we improve the process from different personas, the employee persona, new hire, manager, leader, and effectively making sure that we're reimagining their experiences as we go forward. So that's really what I do.
Fantastic. Thanks again for being with us.
You're welcome.
And we also have Asena Monzo from Deloitte. Asena leads up their workforce transformation practice.
Hi, Jim. Thanks so much. Yes, as Jim mentioned, Asena Monzo with Deloitte Human Capital Workforce Transformation Practice, and I lead up our talent acquisition, or what we're now starting to term talent access practice. When we think about the needs an organization has in terms of ensuring they have the right talent to power their future and meet the demands of today, it's important to be thinking about external talent, how we curate and enable those relationships and nurture those. Very importantly, our internal talent, and then the contingent talent. So very broadly, what are all the talent capabilities and ecosystems that we're working with? And I'm really passionate about this concept of super teams, which is really pairing technology with people to make sure that we have a lens towards re-architecting the work and humanizing it. So looking forward to our conversation today.
Fantastic. It also describes our panel today. It's a super team. It's some of the best folks that we've ever had. And last but not least, Mr. Hickey, welcome.
How are you, Jim? Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Hickey from Oracle. I've been with Oracle now for about 12 years, and I run business development for what I consider the best part of Oracle, and that's in our platform group, the group that focuses on high growth innovators and unicorn companies. Tremendously exciting part of the business. I work on Platform Cloud. I've been doing this at Oracle for 3 out of the 12 years that I've been at the company. Been a tremendous experience for me. Prior to joining Oracle, I'm a multi-time startup CMO, have a long history in international sales, and at one point ran a customer service organization. Jim was kind enough to throw a little personal tidbits on there. We've discovered we have a shared interest with one of the Eightfold AI folks organizing this in doing crosswords. So we've had a lot of crossword talk while we've been doing this. So thanks everyone. Thanks, Jim, and thanks to the panelists, and thanks to everyone who's joined.
Thank you, Jim. I think we've crossed the gambit of mixology, crosswords, and human capital management. They really do go together because the buzzword compliancy and having that as part of the skill set has become fairly critical. So I added one little thing to the very beginning because I think it's very germane in kicking this off. So I added, what are your goals this year, panel? What do you most want to achieve? How has the pandemic changed work for you? And have some fun in sharing what were some of the career firsts that you had and some of the most impactful career lessons learned. And then I'll throw in one at the end. So Jim, you want to start us off there?
Sure. 2022 goals. So I am focused on doubling our business in my segment, and also landing a 9-digit account this year, $100 million account. That's in our cloud. We're really focused on doing business with the unicorns and some of the most exciting names in the tech industry. And we're very ambitious. Those are my professional goals. My personal goal, I'm in the process of acquiring Irish citizenship, and I would like to have that wrapped up by the end of the year.
That's fantastic. That's a new one.
Yeah, I didn't share that with you. Hickey is a Southern Irish name. My grandparents were born in Ireland, and if your grandparents are born in Ireland and you can assemble all the documentation, you qualify for citizenship. I'm waiting on one piece of documentation.
Fantastic. Asena, I'm going to give you the same questions. They're not going to be up in front of you, but I think you can handle this.
Sure. So 2022 goals, I think for us and personally, it's building on our Deloitte human capital trends and all the research that we've been doing to help organizations understand and unlock potential in their workforce. So one of the key tenets of our human capital trends is how we humanize the work. We look at the work, the workforce, and the workplace. And so this combination and our re-architecting work strategy is really helping us identify the areas that organizations can learn from the pandemic and how to better leverage the technologies that can propel them to unlocking that potential of their workforce. So those are critical aspects of the goals that we have as an organization. And for me personally, the relationship with Eightfold has been fantastic in being able to help demonstrate the ways in which the technology is helping organizations think about their path, how to look at the technology that they have in place today, and to harmonize that with their workforce processes. From a personal perspective, I think one of the biggest challenges was finding creative ways to keep our teams and our families engaged in a virtual environment. And I guess my biggest success was a virtual tea party for my mom as she turned 80, and that was a huge success. So great opportunity to think about the ways we stay connected as humans.
That's terrific. Thanks for sharing. And Stuart.
Well, so for me, I think at the end of 22, we're skating towards what I call sort of mass career customization. So this ability for us to know where someone is today, where they want to be tomorrow, and help them get there, whether it be through recommending roles and jobs, whether it's recommending learning, but effectively building that sort of self-learning, self-growing organization. Aspirational, but that's sort of where I'd love to be by the end of next year. And we built a lot of the foundational components sort of already. So we feel like everything's coming together where that may happen, at least for the functions that I support, especially definitely technology. Hopefully our operations function would be able to achieve that as well. With regards to the sort of thing I learned from the pandemic, it's interesting in that I worked for 3 years as a CHRO for a very high growth software development organization. Was predominantly building software out of Eastern Europe. So ironically, going virtual was going back to the way I was working before. The most interesting thing is to watch the company that was not very virtual go virtual and do it very quickly and adapt. And it sort of makes you realize all those hundreds of thousands of hours that goes into sort of emergency disaster recovery kind of work, sometimes isn't needed. You just need a good, solid, strong team to sort of rally around and solve the problems and get everyone up and running. And I think that sort of makes you realize humans in general are very resilient and are able to sort of work around any given problem that was there. And there was a third thing, and I've forgotten what it was. No, it was last. So what was the third thing?
The third thing was, actually, I'm going to pivot into our session. But the third thing was of all those things, what's the takeaway for what you hope to achieve in the remainder of this year and into next year?
I think the main aim this week is to try and do so much work that I can actually take a vacation the following week. That's sort of like that's my main aim for this week. And we all know we have to work.
Goal.
Yeah, we have to work twice as hard the week before you take the week off. So and make sure things don't drop next week. So that's my goal, and then to sort of re-energize for the second half of the year.
Audacious, I love it. All right, so let's really dig into the topic today. You know, I shared that this is one that I have a ton of passion for. Specifically, my background is 30 years of HR technology. And I started, and I was sharing with Jim before we kicked off, it started before that in hotel management. And I never expected to be in either career, but both I feel very passionate. And I think it's always important to take away something from where you were. And I think the best thing that I ever learned from hospitality and hotel management was you never get a second chance for a first impression. And that has been impactful to me, and I think it's no less true in any business. And it's also what everyone is learning to do over as we've switched into everything virtual. Now, we had an amazing year last year at Eightfold because of the growth. And I think it's important to spend just a quick moment. And Stuart, I'm going to start with your interpretation, but this is an opportunity, and what Eightfold does that is, and this is my gross simplification, we enrich profiles both for the job, the JD, and for the candidate. And as Asena mentioned when we first started, whether that person is inside the four walls already, whether that person is hoping to get a role within the firm, or whether they are a contingent person. And contingent is so much more important now because those lines have been grayed like never before. They're crossing over. And I'll share personally, last year was the first time ever I was a contingent worker. And I took a ton away from that. One of the things I really liked, I had hard and fast goals. And they were really set well at the beginning, and we talked about them all the time. And I think that's the way that it should have been when I was employed. And one of the things that Eightfold does is it changed the dynamic. So Stuart, if you will, I'd love your impression of the impact of AI into where you already were. You had invested a significant amount of time, money, and sweat equity into the HR technology stack. And then you identified some gaps or some opportunities, and here comes Eightfold. And now we have the likes of, it has to be integrated with your current platforms, such as Oracle Taleo and your system of record on all levels. And that's where expertise, workflow, and domain understanding and decisioning comes from the likes of Deloitte. So we have an incredible panel to tell this story. So why don't you take us away and start, Stuart, on your own journey and some of the lessons, et cetera.
Sure. So obviously I've worked 22 years or so in technology firms. So when I joined a couple of years back, BNY, this was my first financial services role. And I sort of thought, well, how hard is it to make that kind of transition? As a HR expert, we should be able to apply our trade in any industry. So I sort of took myself, to BNY and really, sort of dug into the foundation, what where we were, what was really working well, and maybe what some of the challenges. And I think where the challenges lied is an underinvestment in our HR stack for a fair number of years. Or even a fragmented set of investments. Maybe that's probably a better way to put it, is that we were putting a decent amount of dollars against the HR challenges that we had, but ultimately when you spread it too thinly, you don't actually get the kind of traction that we're looking for. So we tackled it by putting together, a sort of multi-pronged strategy. One of those elements is actually to replace the sort of legacy PeopleSoft system to the modern Oracle HCM cloud, and we're in the process of making that transition. Obviously, we still have Taleo, which was very advanced and a very cutting edge 10, 15 years ago, but it's not the latest Oracle, recruiting platform. So what we needed to do is look at different solutions, and some of those solutions became what I sort of use the term, I don't think it's commonly used, as wrapper solutions, the ability to wrap around both legacy master sort of data systems, and then change the master data system and keep that wrapper as a user experience for both the manager and the new hire. And what we were able to do is, in this case, partner with with Eightfold to provide that wrapper from a talent perspective, specifically around recruiting, for us to be able to pull up our resumes that were sitting in our Taleo resume database, sort of cleanse them, augment them, and digitize them to a point where we really understood, what our existing talent did, digitize our job descriptions to make sure that we understand what we were aiming for, and then effectively that solution, the AI and ML solution, was really around, individuals both externally being able to apply and match themselves up to jobs, as well as internally doing the same thing. So we sort of created a multi-pronged approach to bringing to bear different technology solutions that allowed us to work at different rate. As you imagine, the HCM change is a multi-year change. The Eightfold change was, 3-6 months worth of, work and collaboration and implementation. So you're able to sort of bring different vendors with different agility and different depths and challenges together to really solve that problem. And this is just the start of an ongoing relationship that would allow us to improve the way that we build and grow our talent over time.
Now, you've called your firm a self-evolving organization. And one of the things that Eightfold was able to do is accelerate that to a certain degree. Can you share a little bit of exactly how that's happening today?
Well, I think there's, from an internal perspective, we call it sort of the reimagination of a lot of our journeys. So we, as part of the people experience transformation we've been working on, is we sort of created 4 signature programs about 1.5 years ago that allowed us to help our transformation. One of them was called Find, which was really the attract and recruit section. One of them was the Grow, which is really around talent and development. One of them was Ignite, which is really about onboarding and the sort of transitions that people go through. And one was Listen, that sat around analytics and the ability to really understand from the different personas how people were receiving the different services and experiences that they were going through. And effectively, what we're able to do is really in that sort of Find journey, reimagine the way that we recruit, both internally and externally from that perspective. So we were able to sort of look at the application process, remove what was almost a 15-minute application process, because being a bank, we had to be super compliant to OFCCP and all these other regulations, but at the sort of detriment to the candidate that was having to go through a very heavy process that actually they didn't need to go through all of that right at the beginning. So Eightfold was able to help us with reimagining that process. A matching engine up front that allows someone to upload their resume and find the jobs that are most relevant to them, as well as internally, it allows us to sort of digitize the skills and capabilities of our people and match them up both to the vacancies on a one-to-one basis and a one-to-many basis. So in the future, we see that it might help us from a supply-demand matching, from a workforce planning perspective. So we think we got sort of all of these aspects coming together all at the same time.
That's hugely impactful. Sana, I'd like to prompt you for this. Is this a similar journey and experience that other Deloitte clients are experiencing at the same time?
Oh, absolutely. Just as Stuart has outlined, many organizations are on their journey from whatever their existing infrastructure is, whether that's on premise or, earlier generation cloud solution, to thinking about a more modern architecture and how to leverage the capabilities that exist in today's marketplace. And I think Stuart pointed out something that we see over and over again, which is organizations really have somewhat of a proliferation of different solutions that have evolved over time. And depending on the size and shape of your organization, globally, they may be disparate. They may not be well understood and adopted. So one of the things that we do is come in and help organizations take a view of that landscape and look where they can optimize, invest, and accelerate the use of new technology. The journey that Bank of New York Mellon has gone on to really think about how to rapidly start getting the value of this solution with their existing Taleo infrastructure is such a great example, because you can unlock the value that you've invested in building these talent communities, both internal talent communities and your external talent communities, so that you're not wasting that investment and effort you put into development and marketing and attraction. And so then you start to help your change journey along the way as well, right? So you're helping your sourcers, your recruiters, your hiring managers start to see the value of this. And then you can incorporate it into your design strategy as you're moving on to your next gen solution set for your master data. I really like the way Stuart outlined this wrapper concept, because we all know that the change journeys that are most successful are the ones that help bring people along the way without changing where, you know, that cheese is too dramatically, right? So if we can start to give them the view of the future, they can start using it now to unlock the potential of the data and improve their ability to attract, nurture, and hire the right talent, as well as retain and provide opportunities for existing talent. That's, you know, hugely advantageous. The other thing that I think is really important for the audience to understand, there are actually a few things. One, this concept of profile enrichment. So you have, you know, a large database typically of candidates that you have sourced, and you have insight into the information that they self-reported at the time. What Eightfold allows you to do is have greater insight into where that journey has evolved. And so you now unlock the ability with all those relationships that you've fostered in the past and can reignite that discussion. Likewise with your internal audience, the ability to give them agency and pursue their passions by understanding the skills that they have and what other opportunities in the organization exist is a critical piece in terms of our clients' journeys towards retention.
You know, that's the perfect transition, Sana. Thank you very much. So Jim, I'd really love to get your perspective as we look at the role of HR technology. And you and I have been in this space for long enough where we remember when that was an oxymoron. And we have reached and actually surpassed a level of capability. Eightfold is a company that I chased after because I was so compelled at the promise of HR technology finally being realized, because in many respects, Eightfold is a critical element. That enrichment in so many different places on an automated basis provides levels of insight, not just to the recruiting and talent acquisition side, but to right person, right role at the right time, aligned to the right things, as well as the ability to see around corners, you know, 3 to 5 years from now, what workforce planning has always intended to do. But now you have an ability to see and elicit these insights like never before. So as it relates to cloud, right? Mm-hmm. I said when we first started, yep, our clients, every single one of them was already somewhere. So in context of Oracle and Oracle clients, you know, we, I believe at Eightfold, help organizations to accelerate the journey they're already on. We're not taking them a different direction. It's augmentative, almost completely. It accelerates the desired outcomes. It provides a level of insights that they couldn't get before because of the innate capability of the deep machine learning that is the Eightfold AI, as well as de-risking and optimizing the desires and outcomes that they had when they bought Oracle in the first place. How is that journey being experienced for Oracle clients today?
Well, it's a great question. I think, you know, I was listening very carefully to Sona and Stuart as the two of you were talking, and a couple things really struck me. You know, you talked about that there was essentially no single source of information, that there were information about your talent pools in a variety of places. That's certainly what we see with virtually all of our clients. And Eightfold as a company that we work closely with is really very special in that you are both a partner on the human capital management side as well as the underlying platform technology side. One of the few companies that we partner with who actually works both sides of the aisle, if you will. And I think that's important. I think that's really, really important, because what you're doing is bringing for our customers kind of that holistic view of the talent pool and trying to help them using machine learning help them understand where their needs are going and how their talent pool is growing and evolving and potentially matching those future needs. I think, Jim, you referred to that as kind of looking around the corner, which I love as a phrase. Underneath all of that, when you get back to the various databases or sources of information, including unstructured information that might be external to your company for new applicants, somehow you've got to knit together all of that data and those business processes. And you also have to, and I don't know if it was Stuart or Sona who said this, you have to sort of cleanse or normalize that data. Those are things under the surface that are really critical. But I think every one of our clients that we work with sees them as key tasks on the road to taking this into the cloud. Your firm works with us in those underlying technologies to help ease that path and make it a reality, while at the same time, of course, providing machine learning and AI to the, if you will, the evaluation of the talent pool and the enrichment of the talent pool. So I think that's a really special set of attributes that you have that you bring to bear. And then when we think about it from the other sorts of things that are applicable from a cloud maturity perspective, certainly bringing all of that information into one centralized source as a potential in things like autonomous technology that we have for data warehousing. We think that would be an important thing for our Oracle clients to consider. And laying on top of that a variety of visualization tools to help them get a real clear picture of their talent pool and the mapping to the needs, both current and evolving. So those are some of the things that we see. I hope I've answered your question on that, Jim.
Yeah, you have. In fact, I think you nailed something. The importance of data. One of my clients at one point said, Jim, I don't have a data issue. I am swimming in data. What I need is data intelligence or smart data or an understanding of what data, would start blinking automatically and point me in context of how to better run my business from the people side, right? Because people are the biggest, differentiating factor in any firm. So with that said, Sana, we've had these dialogues, in our partnership with Deloitte, we don't just want some of your data, we want all of your data. And that's so very different than HR technology transformations in the past, where they've just taken the quote unquote top of stack, just that one layer of data because of a litany of reasons. But taking that ability to pull everything over, what does that mean? And building on what Jim just responded on, what Oracle clients and Oracle has a mission to do moving forward.
Yeah, I think that concept of being able to leverage the data that you have to ensure, A, that it's helping inform the AI insights, but B, that you're capitalizing on all of your investments in this data. One of the things that we find for organizations, as you mentioned, who are just doing the old style top of stack, is that they've lost all of that insight and knowledge into the pools of people that they have interacted with in the past. A great example is an organization who had moved on to one technology stack, moved from an on-premise to a cloud platform, and now they were moving on to a new cloud platform. And so there were 400,000 records of historical data that had been gathered over the last 8 years that they weren't planning to inject into their new talent acquisition system. With the combination of Eightfold coming into play and the rapid ability to get that data ingested and informing the insights, it dramatically changed their ability to look at those talent communities that they had already established. Likewise, they had historical records of their employee profiles that were Word-based documents that had a different kind of format that had not been brought forward into their new technology platform. And employees, while encouraged to go in and build out their profiles, we all know not everyone invests the time to build them out completely. So what we were able to do in this case is basically work with Eightfold, get that information, that historical employee information, and get it converted into the Eightfold environment. So you have complete view into your talent across internal and external. So really helpful insights, I think, that help drive the ability for organizations to look at what skills and capabilities do I have today? And when I'm looking to fill a role, let's look across all of the continuum and make sure that we can identify that as rapidly as possible. And from an employee perspective, having that data then served up to them, it gives them the foundation to start looking at where they are, where they want to go in their career, and how can they unlock their own potential? What avenues do they have to move forward by understanding the gaps and, as Stuart mentioned, learning abilities, the ability to get mentors that are aligned with their interests, their ability to start looking at project-based activities, et cetera. Those are all kind of fundamental aspects of that data capability.
That's fantastic. One of the things I think all of us have seen in our preparation for our dialogue today is we've discussed the virtual. We've discussed the importance of the underlying skills, really the DNA, both for how we describe the requirements of any given role, as well as the expectations of a candidate, employee, or temporary worker as they're applying their skills and capabilities against the tasks and the matters at hand. So Stuart, I'd like to get your perspective on the role that Eightfold has now in your skills, whether that's from an identification, assessment, if you will. And I'd love to get your critical perspective on how well your employees are self-assessing themselves compared to now what you're seeing with the advent of Eightfold augmenting these outcomes.
Yeah, no, I think we talked a little bit about AI and ML, and it's just one topic just to touch on before. It's not just about linking the HR stack data. It's actually linking the full data set, financials and projects, and bringing that together, because that's where the secret sauce really comes together. And in a previous firm, when we did some ML work on predictive attrition, the largest correlation, it was a professional services technology firm, so basically a firm that built software for a living, but they billed our engineers out to our clients, and we identified the most likely attrition came from the low margin bill out rate. So individuals that made the least amount of profit had the largest likelihood of attriting. And it's for two reasons. Either the customer was we're about to drop them because they financially weren't making us a lot of money and they were worried about where they would land, or the individual wasn't strong enough to actually justify the bill out rate, and by default, they were actually a weaker player. So they attrited faster. And you could only get that data when you brought the financial and the project data into the same consideration. And obviously that's sort of our aspiration, is to bring people, finance, and project data to bear. And obviously as part of the people data, one of the things we're trying to do is we're working with Eightfold to do a pilot to machine learn the skill and capabilities and basically redefine a digitized job library is probably the best way of describing it. So the ability to go into our data set, look at what people have done in the past, what jobs they've moved to and changed, what is their LinkedIn profile look like, what does their resume say, but also go into, for example, our learning records and see, well, what did they learn over the last 5, 7, 8, 9 years? And how do we attribute all of this data to the point in time that someone is in their career? And then against every job, you're able to put these skills and competencies against things. And we find missing job families as the best way of explaining it. So this pilot's currently looking at our operations function. And we're literally, this week, we sort of identified that our operations function really needs a job family called predictive analytics. And those individuals are currently buried in other job families. Business intelligence is also buried. But also another one was relationship management. So you wouldn't think our operations function would deal with relationship management from a client perspective, but they do. But there's no job family to identify those individuals, to train them in the right way, and to make them sort of care, not just for the client relationship, but for the development of that client over time. So what we're able to do is marry, skills, competencies, roles, job family groups, which is the cluster of job families, and you're able to do some pretty cool stuff. Like, for example, create a community of practice where business owners can care for the skill and capability of that community, both today and into the future. So, for example, if our job family called business process reengineering is a little underdefined, we can start to say, well, actually, at this grade level, you need to be a green belt Six Sigma. At this grade level, you need to be a black belt Six Sigma. And now you start to put the foundational steps in place in order for you to create a self-learning, a growing organization, both with, identifying those people, roles, and skills for today, but also starting to evolve those, those skills and those jobs of tomorrow. And you're able to give people identification of those career paths that may be available for them in the future. And that allows you to move away from buying talent to building it in quite a sustainable way. And this is really what we've started to sort of dip our toe into the water and really make a difference with Eightfold being one of our partners.
I'm glad we're recording this, Stuart, because that was probably one of the best articulations on the art of the possible in bringing the data, the processes, and the systems all together at the same point. So, Jim, I'm going to pivot back to you.
Sure.
What are you seeing in really that same subject matter, and what is Oracle doing to help their clients accelerate these same desires and outcomes?
Yeah, that was what Stuart just had to say was terrific, and I resonated with me because a lot of our clients are grappling with the same sorts of issues, not so much in the ones that I'm familiar with, are not so much in the professional services realm, but a lot in the sales and marketing side, particularly the sales organizations, getting that whole view of performance, the HR data set, the data that exists in the CRM system, the finance and commission data. A lot of our customers don't have that one single view of that, right? And you really need all of those pieces stitched together in order to get an understanding of who is really successful, who's at risk, right? Who should we be profiling for promotion? Those sorts of decisions that people really want to be able to make, but they don't have enough insights into that. So I think there's a few things, right? First, the underpinnings. Sometimes it's the technology that you don't see that's super meaningful. The ability to integrate the data from a variety of sources, cleanse that data so you have confidence in it, and then bring it into one central source. Like in our case, not to be like an Oracle cheerleader about this, but like an autonomous data warehouse where now you have one central source of information. You've got it cleansed. It self-operates, it self-patches, so you don't have to worry about maintaining the system itself. And you can really worry about the kinds of things that Sona was talking about, which is separating, as I think about it, separating the signal from the noise so you can gain true insights. That's where a lot of our focus is on the platform side, providing that sort of data pipelining, bringing data from all sorts of sources inside your company and outside, because there's probably LinkedIn data and social media kind of data that would be relevant. Cleansing it so that it is a reliable data source and can be looked at as one data source, and then bringing it into a data warehouse environment and applying analytics on top of that, which can be from your environment, from could be a homebrew sort of thing. It could be a third-party data visualizer, or it could be something from Oracle. We're sort of neutral on those things. But those are things that are all of our clients, I think, are dealing with.
So Sana, you've been in talent acquisition for a long time, and I think what we've been having, even though we haven't said it, we've been having an engagement conversation, because it's engagement of your employees, of your contractors, and the impact of that engagement. And skills certainly is an underlying element of it. How does Deloitte look at the importance of engagement for employees? And I'll tee up one thing for you. We've always been really good in talent acquisition and time to fill and cost to fill. But the more nebulous one is, the quality of hire and the downstream impact, demonstrable impact measured in shareholder value, because we've put all these systems in place and it aligns the employee to business outcomes. Make sense?
Oh, you're mute.
Oh.
Just the pandemic quality there of the little mute button. Well, I think, again, when we look at talent acquisition historically and how we bring the right insights into our talent pools, how do we identify the right talent to come into our organization? One of the things that's been a challenge for organizations is to really rapidly get to the individuals to invest the time in, right? So our hiring manager time is critical in terms of the engagement with the talent as they're coming into the system. So the more we can do at the front end to ensure that we have the right individuals that we've selected to invest time with, we've gone through the right assessment process or identification of skills. One of the things that we're seeing incredibly valuable for both recruiters and hiring managers is the insight into where are the skills? How will we assess those skills? Certainly there are skills that have been validated by the Eightfold perspective. There are likely skills, there are adjacent skills, and then there are skills that need to be validated. So giving that roadmap to individuals who are participating in the assessment process is really an important step in terms of providing the right kind of value and getting to those outcomes that you're mentioning, Jim. From a diversity and equity inclusion perspective, I think we're going to speak a little bit more about that later, but again, having those right insights and driving up the right sort of candidate experience can be critical. So we've talked a lot about the user experience for different components of our organization as we're looking at talent coming into and retaining that talent. Not to be forgotten is the differentiation in the candidate experience and giving them the right sort of insights into how they match a position. That can change, certainly the lens in terms of what they're interested in applying for and joining an organization for. And it certainly changes the way we engage our individuals once they come into the organization. So that opportunity to give them, again, kind of the insights and the agency to understand where they are and how to navigate their career. As Stuart mentioned, looking at the future of work, this is a critical component in terms of how we empower our employees and our organization to meet those needs. And then I'll just wrap up and saying that there are some other aspects in terms of making sure we understand how to unlock the potential and retain the right resources in our organization. If you're going through M&A activity and you're bringing other organizations into the mix, how do we understand the skills and capabilities that are coming in from another organization and ensure that we're providing the right opportunities for that entire talent pool,
Absolutely.
Making the right decisions to capitalize on that. And so there's just some other aspects, I think, of the engagement cycle.
That is such a great point. And what comes from engagement, it's, eliciting understanding, comprehension of how well I'm fitting to the role I've been assigned, what I'd like to do moving forward, and what is the delta between both of those things. So that assessment
Right.
in context of the engagement, also for the alignment for the business. So Stuart, I'm going to ask you, how is BNY Mellon addressing these things? And I've got a couple of panel questions that I'll introduce for the next slide as well. And what's the takeaway? What are you doing with this as it relates to learning the process and the needs of the business moving forward?
So the real challenge you have when you're trying to redesign an ecosystem, that different products and solutions have different maturities at different times. So you have to be very sequential, methodical in certain aspects. So for example, a lot of the strategy for our skills and capability talent evolution has come, to be very candid, from a different vendor, not being talked about here, but a company called Pluralsight. And if you know Pluralsight, they've made a niche for themselves in the technology skills stack. And the technology is relatively transferable globally. Java is Java, whether you're in financial services or you're in retail. And whether you're in India, the UK, or US, or Australia, it is what it is. So it means that the skill assessment is the same, and by default, you can start to look at different people's capabilities and train them from where they are to where they need to be. So if that sort of is the foundation, how do you do that for non-standard roles? So financial services may call all their jobs something slightly different. Some of those jobs in one company might be called something different in another. So you have to build this sort of taxonomy that comes into play. And ultimately, like you say, we don't have the modern HCM, graphy style data set from a HCM perspective, because we're in the middle of implementing that, which will go live in our October-November timeframe. So we need these sort of wrapper solutions to carry the load and effectively allow these heavier projects to sort of catch up. And then we have to then connect them together using API and middleware and make sure that they talk very much to each other. So what I've learned is that you can do some of these projects independently and individually with an eye for the future. So, once we get sort of our Oracle Learning Experience Platform online, we should have pre-done the work to understand the jobs, the families, and the learning, so we can load it into the Learning Experience Platform when it's available. And even if we've got it manually today, we can upload some of that training in a manual way. It's just not as cool as an automated learning experience platform that would allow us to do something in the future. So I guess to sort of answer your question, it really gets into, some things we're seeing some improvements straight away. So the ability to match jobs, match people externally, internally is available to us. But we also have to evolve our jobs. So for example, in PeopleSoft, you typically didn't have a parent-child relationship between a job family group and job families. It was quite a flat table. So we can start to build that extra layer in order for us to load it into Oracle and get it ready for analytics in the future, get it ready for communities of practice that can own that community or cluster of jobs. And then they can start to look at and build out those skills and capabilities, both through the help of Eightfold, but also placing that knowledge into Oracle and making it work seamlessly. Because what we're talking about here shouldn't be what the average person sees. They should see drag resume here, press upload. 90% of your skills are this. Is it accurate? Yes, it is. What is missing? Here's 2 that are missing. Goes to the manager validates. So, and in some cases, the manager doesn't need to validate because they've done some skill assessments that are independent of the manager. And sometimes the manager does need to do that. So all of these things are going and moving at different speeds. And, just like a conductor, you've got to sort of orchestrate these changes in order to get the best momentum and change and transformation as possible. And each company has a different speed that it can accept change and drive it as it goes forward. And, I hope I answered your question, but it's quite a complex one that needed a lot of talking about.
No, you did. And I'm actually going to have Sana expand on that. Now, not everyone has the kung fu that you just elicited, Stuart, as it relates to drawing skills to engagement, pivoting to learning, and driving that to business outcomes. Now, Deloitte, Sana, has some of the most comprehensive thought leadership in this area, especially around skills and the correlation to learning direction and impact of business. What is Eightfold doing in this process, in your estimation, in context of allowing organizations to achieve these outcomes? How does that align with the type of thought leadership that Deloitte's had in this direction for years?
Yeah, Jim, it's a great question. Stuart was talking about really the concept of job architecture and how does that fit on the journey, because it's important for us to be thinking through what are the jobs today, how do we architect them, what's the view towards the future. The ability to get at skills really is the red thread, is I think one of the things that is really setting apart the dialogues we're having. So we're able to take the research that we've been doing for years at Deloitte in conjunction with MIT, looking at what are the opportunity marketplace concepts, how do we enable organizations to start unlocking the potential and really changing the dynamic, not only of the way that we understand the skills that we have, but providing the insights to managers, leadership, and employees to leverage those skills in unique ways. I think if the pandemic taught us anything, it's that we need to be agile organizations, that we're going to be asked to respond to dynamics that we may not have faced before. And so being able to get at the skills and understand the transference and the way we can start charting potential to solve problems is absolutely critical. So I think those insights, interlock really nicely with the ability to get the insights that we're seeing our customers achieve with Eightfold, and they're starting to plan those into their strategy in terms of succession planning, in terms of new product development, and how do we understand the skills and capabilities we have in our organization today and pivot towards something different. So those are all important considerations, I think, in terms of the way that data can be used. The link to learning is a fantastic one, right? As Stuart mentioned, individuals are going through learning. How do we understand what the impact of that is on their skills? And then how do we help both our leaders and our employees understand what skill gaps can be closed through learning experiences, but also hands-on experiences, right? I think that's an incredible use case that now enables us to provide the right sort of hands-on project experiences for people to grow their skills. And that not only helps them, it helps our organizations. And for some, they're unlocking, tens of thousands of hours of unused capabilities that they haven't been able to tap into before because they have those insights into unique skills and they have individuals who want to take advantage of those opportunities.
Well, there's multiple types of engagement, and Stuart, I'm going to pivot to you for one of the final topics that we have today. And once again, thank you all, because this dialogue has been terrific. It's everything I hoped it would be. So engagement in and around the real initiatives that we're seeing for organizations pursuing diversity, equity, inclusion, et cetera, and the importance of having a anonymized capability so that you're addressing those things. And Eightfold had partnered with one of our early clients way back during the fruition of just us coming out to a complete anonymization of all of the data so that selection criteria in and around talent acquisition provided one of the greatest capabilities along that line. I'm also going to weave this into a great question that we had. We talked early on about Eightfold's ability to automatically enrich a profile. And one of the questions that came in is, how does that align with the importance of adhering to GDPR requirements, for instance? And how is BNY Mellon dealing with something along those lines? And how have you used the capabilities of Eightfold in context of DE&I initiatives?
Sure. So, GDPR, it's a fun European law that they brought out, and I think it's a very valuable law, but also I also think the interpretation of it's been sort of very heavily over-rotated, and people see data and information as bad, but ultimately anything that makes your life easier is a good thing, but not at the expense of that data and information being sold. So I think that's just my political ambition of dealing with GDPR. So we obviously evaluated it, and it's GDPR compliant, which means that employees that apply for a role can legally pull their information back as required. I'm not massively skilled to know exactly all the details, but all I do know is that it's a concern of a large global bank with very large presence in Europe. And we wouldn't be running with it if it wasn't GDPR compliant. There was another question, I think, on that was also related to how you deal with OFCCP, which is another fun group that again has good intentions, but sometimes makes life difficult for applicant tracking systems to keep an eye on. And I think what you have to understand is that if Eightfold is a wrapper, it doesn't replace your applicant tracking system. At least not for a company of our size, stature, and complexity, which means that the tracking system itself manages the application stage through to the offer accept stage. And what Eightfold does is it wraps over the top of it and does majority of the work up front with regards to the sourcing, the candidate matching and consideration, getting to the applicant stage and getting to the present to manager stage using Eightfold, but then effectively mirroring the various steps in the tracking system in order to make sure that OFCCP and any other legislation in any geography that you have to track various data points, it's still going to get done. And that's why something like Oracle and Eightfold would work together, or I guess any kind of vendor match. I don't think it's limited just to those vendors. And then effectively when the candidates come in, you can make a decision like what we did, is to anonymize the candidates when they get presented to the manager. So we can strip the gender and ethnicity to try and create a fair and balanced playing field regarding the candidates being presented to managers, to remove the bias from selection in the first place.
Awesome.
I believe we've got a lot more to do. Still more improvements that we can make to measure slates and things along those lines. But we see all of that sort of working hand in hand together.
So there's a number of great questions. I look at our time while we're wrapping up into the final minutes. There's one more that I'm going to pitch to you, Sana, and it's in context of Stuart. They did this 3 to 6 months. That's amazingly fast. How are you seeing that being able to be realized from anyone? And here's weaving in a question too. If a Taleo user, for instance, needs to integrate with Eightfold, how is this platform helping to facilitate and maybe accelerate that transfer over to the cloud?
Yeah, so I'll take the last part first. The way, first of all, it can be integrated into the existing platform with Taleo, as Stuart's mentioned, in 3 to 6 months. The importance is honing in on what your strategy is and making sure that you have the right team in place to realize this value and get it in place, and the change management to support it. I think for the recruiting community and the hiring manager community to start utilizing it, it's not a stretch in terms of what we need to enable them to do, but the change management we wrap around is critical. The value of doing it now rather than waiting until you get to your next large implementation go live is that individuals start reaping the value today of the AI, right? So they get the insights to the skill matching. You also get a transformed candidate experience. As Stuart mentioned, drag drop the resume, they're presented with the opportunities that best match their skills. And it also helps them, this concept of explainable AI helps them understand whether or not it's an opportunity they're willing to invest in. We've seen that transform from the diversity perspective, that the volume of applicants for technical positions coming from female applicants, for example, dramatically. So there's so many aspects that you can start to harness and take advantage of as you're on the journey, and then continue to look at ways to adopt it more fully as part of your overall reimagining and transformation initiative.
There is so much more we can talk about on all this subject matter, but we have run out of time. So I'd like to invite everyone that's on the line to learn more about this. We are having a Cultivate event for our clients, our partners, and anyone interested in learning more about Eightfold and how it works with these large, really diverse HR technology stacks to accelerate, optimize, and de-risk the initiatives that you have in your human capital management initiatives. So that is August 10th and 11th. And there is a web page for this. It's at Eightfold on eightfold.ai under our events page. And we would love to have you and engage you and really address a lot of the other questions that we somewhat ran out of time because of this rich content. So thank you, panel. You guys were awesome. One of the best discussions I've seen. Really appreciate everyone's contribution to this. And thank you all, attendees. We'll respond to all of your questions and feedback to the whole crew back. This has been recorded. This recording will be made available. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.